My dad doesn't know that I heard him tell another kid that he wished he was his son, Reddit talkative. Here my dad, who's 45, has always been into cars. It's kind of a family thing, because my grandpa was also a car enthusiast. My grandpa used to work in a mechanic shop, and my dad learned everything about cars from him. They can spend hours talking about different car models, engines, and sharing stories about the cars they've worked on. It's like their special bond. But for me, well, I'm 17 and cars just don't click. I mean, I know the basics, how to change a tire, oil, and jumpstart a battery, thanks to my dad, and I'm grateful for that. But working on cars for fun or talking about them for hours? Not my thing. And I always thought my dad was cool with that. A few months ago, new neighbors moved in next door. It's a married couple, and their nephew, Mason, who's 16, lives with them. Mason and I go to the same school. At first, I helped him get settled in, showed him around until he made his own friends. We talk sometimes, but we don't hang out. Mason, like my dad and grandpa, is crazy about cars. He has this list of cars he wants to drive and own one day. He started coming over with his aunt and uncle, and he'd hang out with my dad in the garage. Sometimes I'd be there, but mostly it was just them. My dad has this routine where he works on his project car in the garage every other weekend for a few hours. For Father's Day this year, he said he wanted to work on his car all day without interruptions. My mom agreed to it. Whenever my dad works on his car, he leaves the garage door open. Mason has been coming by during these times, talking to my dad and sometimes helping him out with minor things related to the car. I didn't mind. My dad and I did other stuff together. On Father's Day, I went to ask my dad something when he was in the garage with Mason. The door from the house to the garage was open, and they were deep in conversation. I didn't want to interrupt, so I waited by the door. My dad was praising Mason for something he did. Mason mentioned doing that with his dad, and my dad said, "Your dad would be proud of you. You're exactly the kind of son I wanted to have." That really hurt to hear. I never thought my lack of interest in cars was an issue for my dad. I knew he loved me, but hearing that made me feel like it wasn't enough. I didn't say anything and went back to my room. Since then, I've been ignoring my dad. I still answer when he asks me questions or tells me to do something, but I avoid talking to him otherwise. My mom and dad have both asked if something is wrong, but I lie and say no. My older sister kept asking, so I told her what happened. Now, she's not talking to our dad either and is being mean to him about it, but she promised not to tell anyone the reason. The tension at home is unbearable. My parents keep asking why we're mad at our dad, but we don't answer. I feel like I should just let it go and return to the way things were. But I can't when I know my dad is disappointed in me. Am I the asshole for not forgiving my dad? My post got shared on TikTok and I received tons of comments and DMs. Most people told me I wasn't wrong for not wanting to forgive my dad. Because it still hurts knowing he said that my dad did ask to be left alone to work on his car on Father's Day. But not because he didn't want to spend time with us. We had a special breakfast and gave him gifts in the morning. The incident happened in the late afternoon. My mom also likes to be left alone to work on her art projects or read on Mother's Day. It's normal for my parents to give each other breaks or days off. Sometimes my dad didn't invite Mason to work on the car with him. He just told Mason a while back that if the garage door was open, he could come in and chat. Mason usually just comes over by himself or with his aunt and uncle. My dad doesn't even have Mason's number. They're not that close. They just both like cars. A lot of people told me to talk to my mom or dad about what I heard. I was hoping the tension would go away and be forgotten, but that's not realistic. I didn't want to have that awkward conversation, so I kept quiet. Things escalated today. My sister and I were still ignoring our dad. My mom kept asking questions and guessing why we were mad. She even wondered if our dad was cheating on her. Today, she announced we were having a family game night. My sister said we wouldn't join if dad was there and told mom he knows what he did. My mom confronted my dad, and then she made us all sit down in the living room to talk. My dad was mad and told us to say what was on our minds. My mom was running out of theories and was getting desperate for answers. So I finally told her what I overheard. My dad denied it at first, which hurt even more. He tried to lie and say he told Mason he'd be proud if Mason was his son, but that's not what he said. My sister accused him of gaslighting me, and they argued until my mom stopped them. My mom asked if I was sure about what I heard, and I told her exactly what my dad said. "Your dad would be proud of you. You're exactly the kind of son I wanted to have." I've been hearing my dad's voice saying that over and over in my head since that day. My mom turned to my dad and started yelling at him. My dad finally admitted it, but said I misunderstood. He claimed he was just trying to make Mason feel better because it was Father's Day, and Mason was sad about his dad's death. He apologized and tried to hug me, but I was too mad at him for lying, at first. My mom didn't accept his reasoning. She said Mason and his family aren't invited over anymore, which I feel bad about because they didn't do anything wrong. She told my dad to stop spending so much time on his car and pay more attention to his family. He doesn't spend a lot of time on it. Maybe 2 days a month for 3-4 hours. I think she was just really mad. My dad shouted that he'd get rid of the car if it was a problem and left to stay at my uncle's house. Now I feel terrible. I should have let it go, but I couldn't. If my dad hadn't tried to lie, maybe I would have accepted his apology. I'm not even really mad anymore. I just feel like a failure. I wish I could have been more into cars, and then this wouldn't have happened. Sorry for the sad update, but a lot of people were asking for one. I hope my dad comes back home soon.